Hey everybody, and welcome to part 5 of my little mini-series on linking performance to incentive pay. If you haven't been following this series, this is a little bit more of an advanced topic, and it's exploring a really hot topic within the world of executive HR, which is compensation for decision makers. Usually that takes the form of executive managers within organizations, and especially in large organizations, okay? This is also relevant if you ever need to hire managers, because whenever you're hiring a decision maker that has responsibility for a specific area, a big priority is making sure that they do the things that you would have them do, that you're expecting them to do, focusing on really improving the business rather than doing all kinds of shenanigans like trying to get short-term sales so they get short-term revenue, so they get a big bonus, but they're eroding the fundamentals of the business. Things like having a good reputation and having a customer base that is delighted with the organization and things like this. Okay, so we're going to continue with this, and there's a few points that I'd like to mention on this episode. So here we go. Non-financial metrics are inadequate. Okay, this is something that it's a bit of a tough concept for some people to realize. I'll give you an example here, and this is a pretty cliched example, but quality targets of an automaker, okay, were reached when management reclassified certain flaws as acceptable. Okay, so they were using quality metrics as an indicator for compensation for their executive management, and what they found that the executive management, what they did is they just rewrote the requirements and the standards for quality so that they passed everything with flying colors and therefore collected their full bonus, right? Or their full compensation under this agreement. So that's an example where it's a non-financial metric they're going off, in this case, quality, and it's inadequate, okay? So people have to keep this in mind. Other things, incentive plans that emphasize financial success over time will be very supportive of a good strategic plan, okay? This is something that's accepted as a truth, okay? I'll just finish this. It says, just as they are for any other value-creating incentive. So if you're giving somebody compensation based on performance over time, which usually means more than 1 year, okay? So you're looking in the 3 to 5 year time frame, which is either considered medium term or long term, depending on your industry. If you're looking at that time scale, what we generally see is that people, the managers, will focus on creating value in the business and increasing the value of the business, rather than short-term money-making schemes that like inflate earnings during one quarter with no thought whatsoever to the future beyond that quarter. Okay, so that's kind of that's been established. And what if the strategic plan is economic nonsense? Okay, bad business strategies are commonplace. This is well known. You can look at the Wall Street Journal or you can look at the news to see this, right? Well-designed incentive plans will encourage these, okay? It'll encourage potentially bad business strategies, just as they do any other actions likely to destroy value, okay? So what we're seeing also is that if you simply look in the intermediate or long term, you're looking 3 to 5 years out, you're giving people bonuses and you're giving them compensation packages that reflect earnings and things like this, okay? 3 to 5 years out, which is good. One of the problems with this is that it doesn't solve the problem of people coming up with bad business strategies. They will seek a business strategy, okay? They will try to focus on some intermediate type plan. The problem is that people can be focusing on the wrong plans, and this is a very real problem. Okay, this is abstracted in sort of larger organizations, but anyone that's worked in a smaller organization, a small company, this. Just because you're looking, beyond the short term, doesn't mean you're going to be taking the right approach to grow the business. So we can't simply rely on just compensating people based on metrics in the intermediate or long term. That's certainly a part of it, but it can't just stop there. That's the point. That's the big takeaway here. Okay, I have one more page. Here we go. A few other points I'd like to make. Okay, information systems like IT, HR, and other functions are sometimes seen unfairly as cost centers, okay, especially in larger organizations, rather than sources of value creation, okay? The term I like to use for these things is strategic initiatives. Okay, their nature, though, may indeed require closer performance monitoring. So here's the problem. Especially if you have a CFO in charge of all these services, the problem is that they tend to view these departments, these functions, as a cost center. They're a cost to be minimized, okay? Unfortunately, they don't see them as a strategic resource, something that you could use to win the war, something you could use to give yourself a real competitive edge. If your HR department managed to attract all the most talented, intelligent, motivated people, that would be a strategic tool that you could use to gain a competitive edge over your competitors, right? But unfortunately, if you're not viewing HR this way, you're just looking at it as a cost that needs to be cut, you're shooting yourself in the foot and you're not taking advantage of that tool that you have at your disposal, okay? Same with IT. You know, when IT automates things and they give you, very useful business intelligence and things like this, that's a strategic resource. But unfortunately, you can very easily look at IT as a cost that needs to be reduced, and you miss out on its ability to really give you a competitive edge. Okay. Now, that being said, the problem is that if you leave these departments unchecked, especially in larger organizations, it can spiral out of control in the sense that the costs spiral out of control compared with the benefit that they're providing, okay? So that's the issue here, okay? You need to look at these things as strategic resources. How can they help add value to the business? How can they give you a strategic advantage? However, you can't just leave them alone and leave them as a silo, or else their budget will just go up and up and up and up every year, and it won't provide corresponding value. Okay, another point. Excuse me. Revenue, cash flow, EBITDA, and market share are always used as performance indicators. Yes, these are your standard performance indicators for looking at the performance of your business, okay? And they are not necessarily direct indicators of value, okay? Sometimes they can be, a lot of times they can be, but not necessarily, and that's where we run into issues. Okay, a new venture will often base bonuses on early milestones and revenue. Okay, so here's the problem. We have established that looking at short-term financial performance is not usually the best way of determining compensation and incentives. Okay, that tends to encourage short-term behavior. All people care about is the next quarter, and they don't care if they completely shoot themselves in the foot in the long term as long as their next quarter results are good. Okay? The problem is that if you're doing a new venture, you're starting a new department, releasing a new product, etc., etc., the problem with that is that in the beginning, we tend to look at the financial performance as, since it's the only thing you really have to go from, we tend to look at that as the thing that's going to determine compensation. And that's a big issue, okay? We should focus on overall results of operations, okay, through metrics like operating income and return on capital in the 3 to 5 year term, okay? So those need to be a part of the compensation plan, and in the 3 to 5 year term has to be something that we're looking at very closely. I put a quote in here because I just like the quote, okay? Mark Twain once said, "I'm not so much concerned with the return on my money as the return of my money." And this was in relation to a bad investment, okay? The exact rate of return especially when you're dealing with like a risky new venture within your organization, or it could be a startup, right? In itself, it could be a company, a new business. You're just wanting it to achieve some results and just not lose everything, right? I just like the way he put that. And finally, back kind of more on task here. When you shift the term structure of incentive goals from the short term to the medium term, you're addressing a lot of what is wrong with senior management's pay, okay? And this is something I've heard, I've read, and I've seen said, and I agree with, okay? It's sort of like a catch-all to address managers focusing on the wrong things simply by moving things to the medium term instead of the short term, okay? But like we've established previously, you have to go further than that. You can't just stop there, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. That's basically all I'm going to do for today in this. But once again, this is applicable to people that, if you're getting your first mid-manager job, mid-level manager job, or you're moving up to an executive manager job, okay? A lot of times you don't have control over your compensation. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you can make counter offers and things like this, and people are willing to entertain that. These are things to keep in mind, because if you get this stuff right, it not only sets you up for success in your role, okay? You get to overachieve, you get to keep your bosses happy, you get to look like a hero. It's good for your career. Also, you reap the rewards of your efforts if you have indeed been creating value for the business. You've been setting everything up so that they are on a winning path. And if you do that, it's good to be rewarded for it, okay? That's what this is all about. So hopefully that makes sense. We're going to be doing a couple more of these, but hopefully you found that interesting. So I will see you on the next episode of this mini-series. Thanks and take care.